Hello, everyone. My name is Keith with the National Honey Board, and for today's Hiveside session, we're going to be talking about flavored whiskey and the importance of flavored whiskey to honey sales. It's a category that has been around since 1976, but as of about 2006, it really picked up steam. And not only is whiskey becoming more popular, but in general, flavored whiskey is becoming more popular than ever, and honey leads the charge. So the one big thing to take away from this is that whenever we look at the categories that are important to honey sales, the alcohol category is one of the biggest. If we look at Innova new product research from 2021, the alcohol category had the largest increase in new product introductions. Honey represented 7% of all new products. And a lot of this was in the whiskey category. And why this is important is because it's really become the new normal. 10 years ago, the alcohol categories weren't that big in the honey industry. But now, according to our volumetric study, which is 3 years old, so these numbers are much larger now, alcohol is one of the largest categories of honey usage, both on the beer side and the spirit side. Why we're paying attention to honey whiskey is because if you look at trend lines, the upper gray part represents beer. You can see its market share is shrinking. The middle line represents wine. You can see its market share is shrinking. And who's taking away market share is the distilled spirits industry. Since 2000, it's gone from a 28.7% market share to 2021, all the way up to a 41.3% market share. So more and more consumers are drinking spirits. Now, whenever we talk about honey whiskeys, it actually got its start back in 1976. That's when famed distiller of Wild Turkey, Jimmy Russell, created this Wild Turkey liqueur with honey. And it was basically a whiskey that was developed to kind of attract people who weren't traditionally in the whiskey categories, mainly females. They weren't big whiskey drinkers back in 1976, and this was an effort to do it. It didn't have the biggest success, but the company actually brought it back in 2006. But where the game really changed for honey in the whiskey category was with Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey. This was a product that was released in 2011. And since then, it has become by far and wide the most popular honey whiskey in the world. Its sales have increased every year. And in 2021, they sold 2.2 million cases worldwide. What's astonishing about this is that Tennessee honey is something that's being consumed by millennials. And for the most part, many of those are first-time drinkers to the category. So it's really a great way for people who aren't traditional whiskey drinkers to get in the category. Now, I'm not a math major, but I did try to do the math in terms of what does 2.2 million cases of Tennessee honey look like in terms of honey sales. So one bottle of Tennessee honey is 25.36 ounces of whiskey. At 6% honey, which is purely my best guess. It's a pretty sweet product, so I'm assuming they have to have kind of a significant honey usage in it. But if we just say 6%, that's about 1.5 ounces of honey per bottle. There's 2.2 million cases sold, so that's about 26,400 bottles of honey whiskey. All this equates to about 2.5 million pounds of honey just in this one whiskey. And what's, amazing about that is this is just one product. If we look at all the major distillers, they all have honey whiskeys, from Jim Beam to Wild Turkey American Honey to Evan Williams Honey. Even Irish whiskeys are getting into it with the Celtic Honey Irish honey liqueur. And then we also have the craft side, where craft was a bit resistant at the beginning to get into honey whiskey, but now they're fully on board. And we see craft distillers all adding honey whiskeys to their portfolio. And it's getting picked up by the media. Honey whiskeys used to have this perception of being overly sweet, not true whiskeys, but now we're even seeing media write about how honey whiskeys that are good enough to kind of change your perception of what a flavored whiskey can be. And we're starting to see branches off. Hot honey's really popular now. Now Wild Turkey's come out with a American honey sting. So this is a version of their, American honey whiskey, but it's got hot peppers in it, ghost pepper spice, and things like that. So they're kind of combining both genres. If we take a look at the overall category, it's 27 billion last year. This is all flavored whiskey, not just honey. It's expected to be 55 billion by 2032. So honey's really unique in this category because it was really the first. The first flavored whiskeys all had honey. Now that's expanded, but now we're starting to see honey mixed with other flavors, and the honey products that were original are still on the shelf because they've delivered have such a growing fan base. So what we're going to focus on, and what's kind of cool about this category, is all the different methods for using honey in whiskey. Most of your distillers like Jack Daniel's, like Jim Beam, are blending or back sweetening it, but you can also honey cask, stave infusion in a cask, and you can even make mead with a honey yeast. This picture right here is a really cool product where they took kind of honey infused oak spires. Basically, they took these oak spires, set them in a barrel of honey, and then they dropped that in each bottle. So the longer it sits, the more honey flavor it gets, the more it changes. So it's kind of a product that changes all over time. Whenever we talk about blending, back sweetening, this is a great example. This is Golden Beaver Distillery's Honey Run. They won gold medal at our last competition. They basically take their regular bourbon product, and then blend in this case, Northern California wildflower honey. So really just back sweeten their existing product. It's a very popular method. It's a very easy way to get a honey whiskey out on the market. This is kind of a different way to get a honey whiskey out on the market. This is a cask finish. So what this is 3-chord. What they did is they essentially, fill up a barrel, one of their whiskey barrels, with honey. They let it sit a little while, then they drain that honey out of that barrel. Then they blend it and fill it back up with whiskey. So what happens is that honey that's still in the barrel, because you can't get it all out, some of it's soaked up into the wood, starts mixing in with the whiskey, and then they proof it up to wherever they want it to be in terms of sweetness. This is another way to kind of add honey. This is the one where they use staves. So think of tea bags, but instead of tea, they get these big bags that they're putting barrel staves in, and they're dipping those into honey. And they let the wood absorb all the honey, and then they dip it into where the bourbon is. So they keep on doing this back and forth until it gets its desired sweetness, sometimes up to 7 months to get the flavor they want. So all sorts of interesting ways. And we're even starting to see distillers basically take mead and distill mead, but then ferment it with whiskey yeast. And then barrel age it. And so what you've got is something that technically can't be called a whiskey or bourbon, because it's not corn, rye, wheat. It's distilled 100% pure from honey. But because they use a whiskey yeast, and because they ferment it inside, or because they age it inside of barrels, it has a lot of that same whiskey characteristics. So a lot of great ways to kind of create something that sort of satisfies consumer cravings for honey whiskey. So if we look at the future with what's trending, a couple other things that are really positive for this category. One is ready to drink cocktails are the hottest thing in the spirits category. They've not completely, but almost replaced malt-based seltzers in terms of, what people are looking for. And a lot of these are using honey. Jack Daniel's has their own Tennessee honey whiskey that is put in this one, which also contains lemonade. Spirited Hive is a new RTD spirits provider. This is a bourbon whiskey infused with rosemary, lemon, honey, and other natural flavors. And then Sagamore Spirits also has a complete line of honey flavored cocktails. So great opportunities in the RTD section. We're also seeing a return to premium and super premium. And this is despite all the inflation. This is great because, as we know, honey can be kind of a premium, expensive ingredient. But for bourbon distillers especially, this really doesn't matter how much they have to pay for the honey, because if they can create rarity, if they can create quality ingredients, they can raise the price on these products and people are willing to pay for them. As long as they're in a limited run, they use high quality ingredients like honey, price standpoint really isn't an issue. And what's interesting is this whole notion of premium ingredients are being equated to clean ingredients. And that's why we're seeing the growth of kind of spirits, is because people perceive it as having less sugar than, say, beer or wine. And more consumers are trying to avoid sugars in their diet. But people don't kind of equate honey with the traditional sugar. So whenever you see this Jack Daniel's description, they make sure to write on there that it's made with real honey, that it's naturally sweet. So all these things are boding really well for honey because it's this true, pure flavor that everybody loves. It's not something that's done from a concentrate or from a natural powder or something like that. So to wrap this all up, what's next? The good news is we're starting to see a branch out. Right now, the hottest spirit in the spirits category is tequila. And similar to whiskey, there's, the base tequila that is, people are religious about it. They drink it, but now we're starting to see the category expand to more flavor varieties. There's actually 3 really reputable, these are the 3 of them that are out there, honey flavored tequilas. These are all tequilas that are blended or back sweetened with honey that are getting a lot of awards out in the spirits industry and kind of show the next evolution. And we're also seeing a lot of these tequila based RTD products that are using honey in it to provide some sweetness. So hopefully this time next year, I'll be doing a similar talk where I'll be talking about tequila and all the honey tequilas out on the markets. As usual, if you have any questions, email me at keith@honey.com. And I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about why, honey whiskeys are really driving honey sales in the United States.